name is Ibrahim Traoré, and I want to share with you one of the most significant shifts in international diplomacy that's happening right now, and why understanding it is crucial for Africa's future. Over the past 2 years, something remarkable has occurred in Russia's approach to African partnerships. Traditional engagement patterns that had remained consistent for decades have evolved into something entirely new. This isn't speculation. This is documented diplomatic reality that's reshaping how global powers engage with contemporary African leadership. As someone who has experienced this transformation firsthand, I want to explain exactly what changed, why it changed, and what this new diplomatic reality means for every African country and every African American considering partnership with the continent. Stay with me, because understanding this shift will help you recognize the opportunities that emerge when authentic African capability meets respectful international partnership. The traditional Russia-Africa engagement model. To understand what's changed, we must first understand how Russia traditionally engaged with African countries for the past several decades. The established pattern was straightforward. Russia would identify African countries experiencing challenges with their existing international partnerships, offer alternative solutions, military equipment, infrastructure development, resource extraction partnerships, and gradually build influence through dependency relationships. This approach worked effectively in many contexts because it addressed real African needs while providing Russia with strategic advantages. African countries gained access to resources and expertise they needed, while Russia expanded its global influence and secured access to African markets and materials. However, this traditional model was based on certain assumptions: that African countries would always need external expertise to achieve significant development, that regional cooperation would remain limited, and that alternative sources of world-class knowledge would be unavailable to African leadership. These assumptions shaped not just Russian policy, but the policies of most global powers engaging with Africa. The moment everything began to change. The shift in Russia's Africa strategy began when they encountered something unprecedented: African countries achieving results that challenged their fundamental assumptions about African capabilities. When Burkina Faso successfully expelled foreign military bases, formed effective regional alliances, and began processing our own resources instead of exporting raw materials, it represented more than policy changes. It demonstrated African capacity for sophisticated strategic planning and execution that impressed even experienced international observers. But what truly captured Russia's attention was discovering how we achieved these results. Instead of accepting dependency on any single external power, we had developed partnerships with African American professionals who brought world-class expertise combined with genuine cultural connection and authentic commitment to African success. This combination created capabilities that Russia hadn't encountered in their previous African engagements: advanced technical knowledge paired with deep cultural understanding, significant financial resources combined with emotional investment in African prosperity, and strategic expertise backed by family bonds rather than just business interests. The strategic assessment that changed Moscow's approach. According to diplomatic sources familiar with Russian policy discussions, Moscow's Africa specialists began reporting analysis that fundamentally challenged their traditional engagement framework. The reports highlighted that contemporary African countries with authentic diaspora partnerships possessed capabilities that exceeded initial Russian assessments. African American professionals working with African governments brought expertise in cybersecurity, defense strategy, financial systems, and technology development that matched or exceeded what Russia could offer. More importantly, these partnerships appeared more durable than traditional strategic alliances because they were based on family connections and shared heritage rather than purely transactional interests. This analysis led to a crucial realization within Russian policy circles. Their traditional approach of offering expertise in exchange for influence was becoming less relevant when African countries had access to comparable expertise through partnerships that didn't require surrendering strategic autonomy. The new diplomatic reality. The evolution in Russia's Africa strategy reflects a broader shift in international relations that extends beyond any single country or region. Instead of presuming that African countries need external guidance to achieve meaningful development, Russia began acknowledging that contemporary African leadership, especially when supported by diaspora expertise, could achieve impressive results through indigenous planning and execution. This led to a fundamentally different engagement approach, offering to contribute Russian expertise in areas where Russia has genuine advantages, while accepting that African countries would make all strategic decisions based on African priorities, even when those decisions didn't align with Russian preferences. Most significantly, Russia began expressing interest in working alongside African American partnerships rather than competing with them, recognizing that these connections created value that couldn't be replicated through traditional diplomatic relationships. Concrete examples of the new approach. The practical manifestations of Russia's evolved Africa strategy can be seen in several areas. Technology partnerships. Instead of offering complete technological solutions that create dependency, Russia began proposing collaborative development projects where Russian expertise contributes to African-controlled initiatives. Educational exchanges. Rather than providing educational opportunities designed to create loyalty to Russian perspectives, Russia started supporting educational programs that strengthen African institutions while sharing Russian knowledge. Resource development. Instead of traditional extraction partnerships where Russia controls operations, they began exploring arrangements where Russian expertise supports African-controlled resource development that maximizes benefits for African communities. Military cooperation. Rather than providing security solutions that create dependency, Russia started offering training and equipment sharing that strengthens African military capabilities under African command. Why this change benefits everyone? The evolution in Russia's Africa strategy creates advantages for all parties involved. For African countries, it provides access to Russian expertise and resources without requiring surrender of strategic autonomy. African nations can benefit from Russian knowledge while maintaining control over their own development priorities. For Russia, it creates more sustainable partnerships based on mutual respect rather than dependency relationships that can become politically problematic. Russia gains reliable partners rather than reluctant dependents. For African Americans, it demonstrates that diaspora partnerships with Africa strengthen rather than weaken Africa's international position. When African countries can engage with global powers from positions of strength, it validates the importance of authentic African-American cooperation. The role of African-American partnerships. What makes this new diplomatic reality particularly significant is how it validates the strategic importance of African-American partnerships with African countries. Russian recognition that these partnerships create genuine capabilities proves that diaspora connections aren't just symbolic or charitable. They're strategic assets that strengthen Africa's position in international relations. When African Americans bring cybersecurity expertise to African governments, it enables those governments to engage with global powers without technological vulnerability. When African American investors support African infrastructure projects, it provides alternatives to dependency-based development financing. When African American professionals contribute to African institutions, it creates human capital that rivals what any external power can offer. The fact that Russia has adapted their entire Africa strategy to accommodate these realities proves that African-American partnerships are reshaping global power dynamics in ways that benefit African sovereignty. Lessons for other global powers. Russia's strategic evolution in Africa is being studied by other international actors who are realizing that traditional approaches to African engagement are becoming less effective. China, European nations, and other global powers are observing that contemporary African countries with strong diaspora partnerships require different engagement strategies than the dependency-based approaches that dominated previous decades. This is creating a competitive environment where global powers must offer genuine value and respect for African autonomy, rather than presuming that African countries will accept disadvantageous terms due to limited alternatives. What this means for African unity. The new diplomatic reality that Russia's evolution represents has profound implications for African unity and continental development. When individual African countries demonstrate that they can engage with global powers from positions of strength, it encourages other African nations to pursue similar approaches. When diaspora partnerships prove their value in strengthening African international relations, it motivates expanded cooperation between continental Africans and African Americans. Most importantly, when global powers adapt their strategies to accommodate African strength rather than exploit African weakness, it creates space for authentic African development that serves African interests first. The opportunity for African Americans. For African Americans considering partnership with African countries, Russia's strategic evolution provides important validation. It proves that your expertise and investment in African success strengthens rather than complicates Africa's international relationships. When global powers adapt their strategies to work alongside diaspora partnerships rather than compete with them, it demonstrates that African American engagement with Africa serves broader strategic interests. Your technical knowledge, business networks, financial resources, and cultural connections create capabilities that enhance Africa's ability to engage with the world from positions of strength rather than dependency. Building on the new foundation, the diplomatic reality that Russia's evolution represents creates opportunities for even more transformative partnerships between continental Africans and African Americans. When global powers acknowledge that African countries with strong diaspora partnerships possess advanced capabilities, it validates expanded cooperation in every sector: technology, education, healthcare, finance, defense, and cultural development. This recognition creates space for African American expertise to contribute to African development while strengthening rather than complicating Africa's international relationships. The broader implications. What we're witnessing with Russia's strategic evolution in Africa represents something larger: the emergence of a new international order where authentic partnerships based on shared heritage and values can create more sustainable relationships than traditional alliance structures based on mutual interests alone. This has implications beyond Africa and Russia. It suggests that other scattered peoples could potentially reunite in ways that create new forms of international influence based on family bonds rather than purely strategic calculations. My message to African leaders. To my fellow African leaders, Russia's strategic evolution provides a template for how we should engage with all global powers. We should welcome partnerships that respect our autonomy and contribute to our development priorities. We should insist on relationships that strengthen rather than weaken our capabilities. Most importantly, we should recognize that our partnerships with African Americans create strengths that global powers respect rather than vulnerabilities they can exploit. The new diplomatic reality proves that African countries can engage with the world from positions of strength when we combine our resources with diaspora expertise and maintain unity around shared values. My challenge to African Americans. To my African American brothers and sisters, Russia's acknowledgement of the strategic value of your partnerships with Africa should encourage even deeper engagement. Your expertise doesn't just contribute to individual African projects, it strengthens Africa's ability to engage with global powers as equals rather than dependents. Your investment doesn't just support African development, it validates African capability in ways that reshape how the world sees African potential. When one of the world's most experienced strategic powers adapts their entire Africa approach to accommodate the reality of African American partnerships, it proves that your engagement with Africa is changing global power dynamics in ways that benefit African prosperity and African pride. The future we're building together. The new diplomatic reality that Russia's evolution represents points toward a future where Africa engages with the world from a position of strength based on authentic capabilities rather than external dependencies. This future becomes possible when continental Africans work with African Americans to create solutions that impress global powers rather than requiring global power assistance. It becomes sustainable when diaspora partnerships provide alternatives to dependency relationships that have historically limited African autonomy. Most importantly, it becomes unstoppable when family bonds prove stronger than strategic calculations, and when scattered people reuniting create possibilities that traditional international relations can't predict or prevent. Russia's strategic evolution in Africa teaches us something crucial about contemporary international relations. Authentic partnerships based on shared heritage and mutual respect create more durable and beneficial relationships than dependency structures based on presumed superiority and assumed need. When African Americans work with continental Africans to demonstrate African capabilities that impress global powers, it forces those powers to offer genuine partnership rather than disguised dependency. When diaspora connections prove their strategic value, it validates the importance of family bonds in creating sustainable international relationships. The new diplomatic reality we're witnessing proves that scattered peoples can successfully reunite, that authentic cooperation can attract respectful partnership, and that when families work together across oceans and centuries, they create power that transforms how the world engages with their success. Come home, my brothers and sisters. Not because Africa needs protection from international pressure, but because together we're building relationships with global powers that respect our strength rather than exploit our weaknesses. The future is calling. And our answer is reshaping international diplomacy forever. To everyone watching this, Russia's strategic evolution in Africa proves that when scattered peoples reunite to create genuine capabilities, even experienced global powers must adapt their approaches to acknowledge that strength. If this analysis of how authentic partnerships reshape international relations resonates with your understanding of what's possible when families work together, share it. Because this new diplomatic reality is proof that the family reunion transforming Africa is creating respectful relationships that serve African interests first.